Kettlebell Kings would have been a absolute worldwide brand many years ago if it wasn't for the obstacles involved in setting up infrastructure, right? Like you can't ship a kettlebell across the world for cheap like you could, like a poster or a shirt or some socks or something like that, right?
Supplements.
Uh, yeah, supplements, exactly. But we had that kind of brand recognition. We would get inquiries all the time from, many places, sold to like 50 different countries over the course of the business. But ideally, with a partner like this, and I say partner, but they own the business, you know, as long as we can continue to help expand the business, into new countries, new continents, that's the goal, where the name Kettlebell King still becomes synonymous with kettlebell.
Hey everyone, this is Mark DeGrasse, the president of Digital Marketer, and this is the podcast that keeps you up to date on everything you need to know when it comes to digital marketing, from the platforms you should be focused on to the cutting-edge tactics and tools that are working today. Today, our guest is Jay Perkins, the co-founder of Kettlebell Kings and Living.fit, and he recently just exited and is now building a new empire. So we're going to talk about Kettlebell Kings, Living.fit, kind of how you utilize content marketing to grow those brands, and then also, what you're doing next. So let's get into it. Welcome, Jay.
Hey, Mark, how you doing? Nice to see you again after all this time.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's like, I'm like, oh, I know Jay, and it's been like 6 years or longer.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time, but I feel like I just saw you and was probably picking up kettlebells. I think was the last time.
Yeah,
Dropping off a magazine.
Warehouse in Austin. I feel the same way. I'm like, God, I can't believe that would have been that long ago.
Yeah, no, that's life now. So let's just get into it. So Kettlebell Kings, I think, did you end up becoming kind of like the top provider of kettlebells? Because I can't even think of another brand other than like Rogue, but they're not really kettlebell focused.
Yeah, obviously it would depend on how you're, defining top provider of kettlebells. I would say while we were running the business, there was a time where we were certainly the number one Google ranking item for kettlebell and kettlebells, and smaller ancillary search terms, competition kettlebells, powder coat, that type of thing. But yeah, I would like to think on our own way, we were the top provider. We outranked Amazon and all our competitors who were much larger at the time.
That's awesome. Well, that's applied to, your ability to, come up with the content, optimize for SEO. And then it really just, I think the focus you guys had, because it was always, the name Kettlebell Kings, what do you sell? Kettlebells, good niche.
Right.
But you guys didn't just do like one aspect of kettlebells, because most people don't know that there's kind of camps of kettlebell users, because everybody's a bunch of weirdos. You have the functional side of kettlebells, then you have the competition side of kettlebells, then you have like the hard style side of kettlebells. How did you guys kind of niche down into the market of kettlebells?
So just how did we decide to focus on kettlebells in the first place? Yeah, that's a great question. So my business partners and I, we were friends from college, and we had our first jobs out of college. We all had similar aspirations of wanting to start our own business. At some point when I was about 25, 26, I started working at an e-commerce company. So I had some exposure to what it takes to build and sell online. For about a year, we would just have weekly meetings together and talk through different business ideas and just kick around ideas. So, we talked about things like socks or, smoking related stuff, embarrassingly to say, right? And eventually we settled on kettlebells. We could see at the time, this is 2010, 2011, that they're becoming more popular in workouts, right? Out of all the websites I ever sold when I was in e-commerce, no one was ever really focusing on that. And so obviously that's kind of rule number one, is you got to have your niche. So it was the right combination of some analysis about what the market was like at the time, probably also combined with just being young enough and risky enough to just say, let's just do this. Right. So we settled on that's what we were going to do. And we just kind of went for it after that and learned a lot along the way about how to build and run the business, effectively market the content, work with different groups, different organizations, that type of thing.
I love that, because I really think that identifying just the opportunity, not just the opportunity like, okay, people buy kettlebells, but also what you guys are personally interested in. And based on your experience in maybe that segment, saying, hey, kettlebells is a thing that could be there, could be the product. So when you got started, did you actually start with like an entire line, or was it really just one type of kettlebell and then you kind of grew it as you went along?
Yeah. So, it in a lot of ways, I think it's embarrassing. And in a lot of ways, it's I think what a lot of people who are starting businesses or marketing should do, where they're willing to make pivots. Our original idea was like we were going to be like a superstore of kettlebells, and we were going to
Mm,
carry all these other brands of kettlebells. So like kettlebell A, kettlebell B, kettlebell C, right? That was kind of the naivety of not having a lot of experience in business or online at the time. Um, and so eventually, after we launched with that format, we realized, okay, this is not going to work for, any number of reasons, margins, all that kind of stuff. So we started working on our own brand of kettlebells, and just through research and talking to other people, that's how we decided we're going to be carrying multiple lines of our own types of kettlebells. I think we recognized that we weren't experts early on, obviously. Like there was a lot of fitness experts or kettlebell experts in the space trying to start businesses at the time, right? They had one aspect of it, but maybe not the business or marketing aspect of it down.
mm,
I think because we realized we didn't know, we sought those people out as experts and asked for feedback on like what would be helpful to carry, what are different types used for, what would make a good item, how would you improve this item, so that we could tweak our own molds and release a number of different types of kettlebells.
mm. No, that's a great way to do it. And I think, the one thing you didn't say there was the operational requirement, because if you haven't sold a heavy item
Right.
before, it's a pile of problems most of the time that you don't predict. 'Cause you're like, oh yeah, you just put the thing in a box, you wrap it up, you ship it
Yeah.
off. And it's like, no, the thing might weigh like 105 pounds.
Yeah.
So how did you guys kind of realize, like, because I remember you had a big warehouse when I went and saw you. I was like, man, you guys are moving product, and it was you and I think maybe one other guy, and you're
Yeah.
just sweating in there.
Yeah. 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 Those were the days, right? Again, everything was kind of a learning process. And so, we started the business where we had our first load in like a storage unit off like Ben White down here in Austin, and
Uh,
get an order. We drive over there, open it up, drive it to like an Office Depot location, and ship it out. Right. Eventually we got that warehouse, and, we were unloading them on our own. We were packing them on our own. And again, you just have to kind of pick up on the things that you figure out, how could the business be better. So I think probably shortly after you visited, at least a year or two, we transitioned into having like 3PLs across the country.
uh,
Because obviously when you're shipping weight, there's a couple of variables you really need to think about. One is the cost. The further it has to go, it's just going to cost a lot more, right? Two is you're exponentially increasing the number of people who have to do their job correctly in that supply chain to get a good product to the customer, so the end customer has a good experience. And so obviously with proximity, you reduce the amount of people who are involved in that process, and you increase the likelihood of creating a better customer experience.
mm.
So it was after experiencing things like that, making adjustments to the boxing, and we need more, you know, padding in this box. We need a double walled box here, that, we got it right.
That's fantastic. And well, and I think almost an oversimplification of what you guys went through, because even in doing that within a year or two, like that's really hard. And it takes, people a lot of experience to realize that you even need three locations to ship out of. Like a lot of people are just like, no, we can figure it out here. And it's like, no, the numbers don't
Yeah,
work.
that's an interesting point, because I do think that m- a lot of fitness companies still ship from a centralized location, and I even think it's some of the really large ones as well, as best I can tell. When I look at what shipping costs might be, or if it says where it's shipping from, and so it is a bit surprising. There are challenges. There's a whole new set of challenges where you don't have visibility on the product every day. You don't the people in another warehouse might not have the familiarity that you have with the product, so that you pick and pack the right product, for example. But overall, I think as long as you know how to take care of customers when there are issues, because in the end, they're the most important part of the process. Um, you'll get it right over time, I think.
No, it's fantastic. Well, even just your ability to realize the importance of customer service. Because, when I had my website agency, I would tell people, I'm like, all right, we're going to build an e-commerce store. But just know that if you get an order and you don't ship it out immediately, you're going to have problems, and you will
It,
get multiple orders, because people think of like, oh no, I'll keep up. And you're like, no, if it 10 order processing takes you 4 hours and you just did 500 orders,
Yeah.
how is that going to happen? So how did you guys kind of, did you just make mistakes along the way, kind of figure out that process, or were you ready to scale?
Yeah, I'm sure we made lots of mistakes along the way. I mean, I can remember one like Black Friday early on where it was like our first kind of really big Black Friday
Mhm.
where, you know, we did like substantial sales numbers, and I was in the warehouse by myself on that particular day, and packed like 120 boxes or something. And it was obviously a lot of work. Uh, and obviously that's when we started thinking one of the catalysts for, okay, we need to look at how we can get some help here or look at other warehouses. Um, but I just remember like saying out loud to myself that day, like, I'm working on something I created in my head or something, something to that extent where I was trying to basically pump myself up to move like thousands and thousands of pounds of weight, and get it shipped out on time. But to get back to your point, we knew from the beginning that customers were the most important thing, right? And so we were just going to be willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that a customer had a good experience. Like even in like let's say the small gap of the UPS pickup is at like 4:30 p.m. Let's say 5 orders come in before 5 or 6 before we leave the warehouse. We were still packing those up, putting them in our cars and driving them to like a drop off location 5 miles away. Because we just kind of understood that without creating a unique experience, there was going to be no way we were going to be able to differentiate ourselves from other businesses.
No, no, that's a huge realization because a lot of people, I think they get intimidated and then they get tired and then they're just like, you know what? They can just deal with it. And then they'll get mean to customers and you're like, you're competing with Amazon and
Yeah.
Amazon will just comp you whatever if something screws up. Like
Right.
if you're not, well, one, if you are not planning on doing that, then your customer service and all your operations have to really be in line because otherwise you're not going to be able to, serve them the way that they'll come back.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Yeah.
so it
That's
sounds like you
very
guys,
true.
kind of went into the realization too that the repeat customer is really where the money's at. Is that what you ended up finding out, or how did you kind of cultivate people to come back after they had that first buy?
Yes. In retrospect, it seems like maybe it was just obvious to us that we needed to do that. I don't know. I think maybe this is something just lucky about the age that I'm at, where when we around the time we started the business and just before, I think like bodybuilding.com was like really gaining
Mm,
some popularity. And so I had some experiences like where I ordered from them and it was just like incredible, where I got my stuff like the next day. This is like 12 years ago, 13 years ago, and that was not common
no.
in buying online and just like get your stuff the next day. People were used to having to pay for shipping and then wait for items. Bodybuilding.com had you could get free shipping when you ordered over a certain amount, and you were going to get it like a day or two later. And so that's just something that like really stuck with me from the beginning, that like this is an incredibly different and better experience than when I buy other things online most of the time. And this is something that I want to make sure that we figure out how to replicate in the business. Cause like I know how good I feel as the customer when this happens. Like I feel like I matter. I feel like this stands out and I'm gonna come back. And so that became more of a philosophy at that, it was, I think in business, you got to have philosophies or principles about how you think about things. And in this case, this would be an example of the philosophy or principle was how can we do any little thing to make this customer experience stand out from when someone gets something elsewhere?
Mm.
And that's your guiding principle. That's going to lead you to a lot of different outcomes, I think, in how you approach the business.
No, that's spot on because I think and like I said, you keep on saying kind of like downplaying it, but it's like, no, dude, that realization that you're able to, take care of a customer, really try hard to do it, and then do whatever it takes to make sure it happens. Like people miss that all day long. And so now you did an awesome job.
Yeah, I mean, you might take it for granted, I guess, when like that's how you operate your business. I certainly have had experiences when I buy from other businesses where I'm like, whoa, like I cannot believe this is how they're acting towards me
Yeah.
right now.
A new
You know,
customer.
yeah. So yeah, that's true, I suppose. But Yeah, and I think if you're going to try to build an e-commerce business, that has to be one of the things you think about. Is just how can at every point of the process, how can you be thinking about making what you're doing unique for the customer, whether it's in the quality of the product, how fast they get it, what happens after they have the product, how you support them, that type of thing. The converse part of that, or the opposite side of that, is when you pour your heart and soul into that, some customers will still have a bad experience, and they will insist that you're the worst, most incompetent company in the world. And, they'll leave you a bad review. They'll tell you just how you don't know about anything you're doing, and that can be tough to take sometimes when you care so much. Like, and just find yourself being like, no, I know what I'm doing. I know you had a bad experience, but like, so
Yeah,
it's,
give me a break.
yeah, exactly.
No, and that's another side of the e-commerce business where like no matter how good you do, sometimes, we all have Karens and Chads and they will, mess up your day if you give them a shot. Even if you say like, fine, refund, keep the product, just
Sure.
leave me alone. They'll
Right.
still, but those people you're not going to fix. So no,
Yeah.
that's
And it's a weird dichotomy, and maybe this is something I haven't figured out how to mature yet, but like that stuff still gets to me, right? Like even in my current business, living.fit, I've had a good exit at a business. I know what I'm doing. I know my intention is in the right place. I know my goal is to take care of a customer. But even if, and at this point, I could still think about it maybe in terms of like, I shouldn't let this bother me. Like, I know, but it still does. Yeah, it still does.
yeah, but while having the discipline to still get through it and still serve them like they weren't acting like that is, that's how you make a real business because
Right.
you're never going to avoid these people altogether. It's just unhappy people. But let's get into living.fit. So did you, I know you had Kettlebell Kings for several years before you came up with that concept. How did you kind of, one, decide to do what I call a partner brand, where you basically have like a content platform that
Right.
supports the e-commerce platform? And how did you start building up content to make that a real brand?
Yes. So again, I think probably maybe fortunate set of circumstances just working in e-commerce, or having exposure. We realized early on how important content was. I would definitely put it in the top three most important things to our business, at least, if you're talking about customer service and content, because it serves so many purposes. One, think people can share it. Two, is it works hand in hand with customer service because you can create content that is helpful from a customer standpoint, how to use the product, how to get maximum use out of the product, right? You can answer frequently asked questions in content too, right? And you reduce your customer service questions and workload. So to me, it all fits together really nicely. From the beginning, content was a focus. A few years into Kettlebell Kings, as we were starting to think about how can we diversify this business. So this is probably 2016, 17, we started thinking about it. Obviously, we're focused on kettlebells, probably influenced by some of the stuff I was reading at the time. We were trying to think of, well, what if there's like major supply chain issues, or what if the cost of iron and steel just skyrockets, or uh, any number of variables, that could negatively affect our business. How could we still, even potentially grow from that, right? And so that's where the focus for Living Fit came in. And so Living Fit, has a lot that it's doing right now. One, courses that people can take in kettlebells and battle rope. So actually courses that trainers can earn CEUs with, right?
Hmm.
Workouts that people can do at home. So there's obviously a lot of workout platforms out there, but this is one where people can follow along and do workouts in any number. And then three is just non-kettlebell products, right? So bands, slam balls, dumbbells, just things like that. So the main inspiration was, one, how can we start diversifying our revenue stream? What if there's an article that comes out tomorrow that definitively says kettlebells are the worst piece of equipment for you, right?
Super dangerous.
Yeah, it's something like that. That debate is settled once for all, and turns out we're on the wrong side of it, or something like that. Uh, so that was the main inspiration, and that's why we started creating the content. We wanted to have something we could build recurring revenue, more high margin revenue from. That's why how Living Fit was born.
Oh, that's awesome. And now, how did you connect kind of all the workout plans and exercises and everything you did with Living Fit with, selling to Kettlebell Kings? Was it an obvious relationship? Like, hey, here's the workout plan. You need a kettlebell for this. Go ahead and get it here.
Do you mean like in how the relationship between the two businesses or something like that?
Yeah, kind of like how was the content platform used to generate organic traffic that you then redirected to the e-commerce side, or is it just the
Yeah.
email list kind of connection?
Yeah. I mean, again, it was all kind of full charge, full press on everything, right? So like the goal is certainly if someone was to encounter Living Fit first, they're gonna either be able to purchase a Kettlebell Kings kettlebell through Living Fit, or we didn't have e-commerce functionality on the first iteration. So it was just sending people to the
Good
Kettlebell
over.
website, right? Or vice versa. So that messaging was probably a little bit muddled early on because of the technology that we were using, not having e-commerce capabilities. We've updated over the last year. We have a pretty robust site that can sell product and people can access workouts on, for example. But yeah, it was, part of the content marketing. Yeah, some of that is in email workflows. And so no matter which way you're coming into what we would have called our universe at the time, you were going to be getting messaging about all the opportunities available to you with either brand.
Oh, that makes sense. So it's more just kind of like an organic connection that just kind of happened because people would come in from Kettlebell Kings and find Living Fit, or come in from Living Fit and find Kettlebell Kings.
That's correct. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, and that's actually a great model. That's what I did. Actually, yeah, no, I did the same thing because we were selling kettlebells, and then we made a magazine to sell the kettlebells, and then
Right.
didn't really, did we call it? I'm trying to think of what we even called the kettlebells, but yeah, it's a great model. And I think fitness is perfect for it because there's so much content that you can make and easily connect.
I think fitness is probably one of the absolute best areas that someone could work in from an e-commerce standpoint. I'm obviously biased because I've been doing it for a while now, but one, everything you just mentioned about content, right? There's so much you can do with content, and there's so much value you can provide to people with fitness content. Even, as I look at other businesses, I certainly evaluate it through that lens now. Like, what are the direct applications in fitness that would work in this business? Like, does it have a how-to aspect that you can build content around? Does it have, a learning aspect that you can build content around? What are the sales channels that are available to this business, like D2C, B2B? Does it have the same thing that fitness has? So I think fitness is incredibly strong. I think you could also argue that it's probably one of the most robust businesses, depending on the economic environment too. If the economy is good, people are buying kettlebells, gyms are expanding, they need kettlebells for their gyms. If the economy is contracting, a lot of your variable costs like shipping are actually probably going down,
Mm.
so that your margins are not squeezed in that case. People might be foregoing their gym memberships and be looking for something at home. So I think fitness is just an incredibly robust business if you know how to position the right.
Well, no, I think that what you've done is amazing. I think the content play is spot on. I think that every company nowadays, has kind of foregone content because marketing was able to facilitate all of your, demands just through paid media or maybe email marketing. Like those two things were okay. Nowadays, I think it's the exact opposite. I think now that content is going to be so easy to generate that every customer you have ever is going to start to expect it. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, you sold me this thing about coffee. Like, where's all your coffee content? Like, where am I supposed to find this stuff? You gotta look it up. Like, why would I go to your competitor to find out about your product? So I think that was, you were ahead of the curve. So
Yeah, I think about that a lot. And in a lot of ways, I actually worry about it because what you said is ahead of the curve. Obviously, that's something you have to do in business. You have to figure out how to stay ahead of the curve, right? And I think that's something that we did very well is we were very open to always trying new channels, new ways of marketing. And we understood that at any point, any form of marketing was just start getting priced into how any business operates, costs are going to go up, right? Whether it's Facebook or Google, email marketing, um, eventually everyone's going to start doing that because there's an entire industry trying to teach people how to do that. And so, how do you figure out what's next? And it does feel like a constant battle to figure out what's the next most effective way to reach customers.
Yeah, I think that'll keep on transitioning. So in terms of exiting, I think your timing was great. Let's talk about that real quick. So did you decide to exit and then sold, or was it more like somebody approached you and then you realized it was a good time?
Yeah, so started, this would have been summer of 2021. We started getting a lot of inquiries from people. One, either looking to provide some form of financing or funding to the business, or two, actually purchase the business. There over the last 2 years, there's been a really big push in the space where people are trying to aggregate successful brands, right? It's in the same way that you had like Procter and Gamble and things like that, just buying up traditional brands for the last 5 to 6 decades. That's now happening in e-commerce, where there's these big aggregators looking to just build their portfolios as successful brands. Um, so we started getting approached. When that happened, it kind of opened our eyes to what was going on, and we started doing a little bit more actual proactive reaching out just to see what's out there on the market. Make sure that anyone, they're offering something that they're not under offering us, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, eventually we got a few different offers for the business after sharing some of our numbers. It was never like set that, okay, yeah, we are going to sell, we're looking to sell. um the way that I have thought about it, or made the analogy, is it's like if we were at the blackjack table and we were up pretty big. The offer came along that allowed us to take some chips off the table and then kind of play with house money after that, because you get into earnouts and the ability to keep earning on the success of the business after it's in someone else's hands. And so, yeah, it just felt like the timing was right. Everything I had read previously was you should never really be rigid about what your exit would be or what you would do. You have to constantly evaluate the environment and decide if it's the right time or not. And we felt like, based on some of the offers we got, that the timing was right, and we ended up taking an offer.
That's awesome. Well, and I think, like I said, I think it's perfect timing. I think a bunch of changes are going to be coming soon, and it's like you're in a good position because you have the freedom to decide what to do next because it's going to be opportunity city in like really soon. So
Yeah, I'm very happy with the offer and the timing of it for sure. And then, looking forward, because I do still consult the buyer, one of my co-founders and I still consult the buyer. So, we look forward to that opportunity to help grow the business. And ideally, when you move into a situation like this, the company that you're selling to can do something you could never have done on your own, right? Kettlebell Kings would have been a absolute worldwide brand many years ago if it wasn't for the obstacles involved in setting up infrastructure, right? Like, you can't ship a kettlebell across the world for cheap like you could like a poster or a shirt or some socks or something like that, right?
supplements.
Uh, yeah, supplements, exactly. But we had that kind of brand recognition. We would get inquiries all the time from many places, sold to like 50 different countries over the course of the business. But ideally, with a partner like this, and I say partner, but they own the business, you know, as long as we can continue to help expand the business, into new countries, new continents, that's the goal, where the name Kettlebell King still becomes synonymous with kettlebell.
No, that's fantastic. I think that's kind of the ideal scenario for exiting the business is seeing it grow even more and being like, I couldn't have done that, or I could have done it, but it would have taken me another 10 years. And then what are you doing? So no, congratulations. I think what you accomplished is amazing. I think the brand's amazing. I think your use of content to grow the brand is amazing. So very impressive. You did an excellent job.
Thank you.
So, based on what you're doing now, where can people find out more about you and what you have planned next?
Well, I'm not on everything. I was going to say that. If someone really wanted to connect, I said, LinkedIn is a fine place for that. Just Jay Perkins on LinkedIn. As far as like what I'm doing now, as mentioned, consulting the buyer of Kettlebell Kings, which is exciting, and hope to continue providing some growth there. I am also working on Living Fit still, because I retained ownership in that. And so in a lot of ways, I'm completely starting from the beginning again. Unfortunately, I think it's slightly different, because I know more what I'm doing now and I know more people in the fitness industry. But www.living.fit is where, we have pretty much everything that's non-kettlebell equipment, plus workouts, forces, all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Well, yes, everybody should definitely check out living.fit, especially if you need some fitness advice and kettlebells, which I still think are the best training method. That's what I used to do. And I'm like, oh, I actually just started training with them again. And I'm like, yeah, this is better than anything else. So
I've had that same experience where you kind of get away from them for a while, and then when you come back to a workout with them, you're like, man, these are great. I love these.
well, it's just so functional, and you could do a killer workout in like 10 minutes, and there's nothing else that you could do that with other than calisthenics. But calisthenics is boring. Nobody likes burpees. Yeah, no, thank you. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, Jay. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate the story, and I think it's very inspiring for people to hear. The process that's not this clean. Hey, I'm successful, and it just happened because I'm so lucky. And it's like, no, it's work. It's maybe a decade of your life. It's a process, but you did it, and you did a great job.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to hit that follow button so you get notified when all of our new episodes release. Please share this with that friend who is clueless about digital marketing. And don't forget to visit digitalmarketer.com, where you can access all of our courses, certifications, and training programs. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next time.